10 o'clock, so I will go ahead and let you kick us off.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for the opportunity. I know that we're all busy, and so I appreciate you jumping on. I'm not going to talk for an hour and a half or anything like that, y'all. So it's going to be probably a 20-minute boot camp, kind of an overview of our product. But I'm excited to announce, and I'm sure, Carrie, you've already announced this to everybody, but this is a product that you all have access to now on your CB desk platform through CB. And then I don't know if we have some other portals for maybe some subsets of agents as well. So maybe offline we can talk about those. But essentially, what you have access to, everybody, now is a product that if you went to our website and you went and bought it on your own, the cost is $995 for a year. So I'm waiting for my PowerPoint to start up here for a second. So $1,000 a year that your company is paying for this access on your behalf. Okay. And we have thousands of agents who pay that amount on their own every year. A lot of the biggest trainers out there, people that are spending money on coaching, things like that, they're buying our product because our coaches say, hey, buy this system. So you have access to this right now, and it's completely unlimited. And of course, my PowerPoint's taking forever, so it's going to pop up here in a second. But think of Cole as a database of everybody in your area. Okay, so everybody in your area that gets mail overlaid with cell phones were available, emails were available, and demographics were available, like age, income, home values, things like that. And then, just curious, by show of hands, who's heard of Cole before? The Cole directory, the big blue crisscross books. Any of you guys heard of us before? So I see Victoria raised her hand, right? So finally, it just popped up on my screen here, the PowerPoint. So that's what we're known of. We have a 75-year history of printing these big blue crisscross directories, but obviously it's online now, and that's what you have access to. So what I'm gonna do, everybody, is if you could hold off for questions until the end. I do these presentations all day long. 90% of your questions are going to be answered over the next 15 minutes, and then we'll stay on as long as we want to and answer questions after that. Okay, so I would just love for your full attention here and really watch what I'm doing, what I'm saying, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a couple case studies on how agents are just crushing it using our platform, and then also jump in and do a boot camp and go over the main searches of how to download your lists as well. The first thing to remind you all, though, is that we're not internet leads, okay? So a lot of people are spending hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars on buying internet leads. And if you're having success with them, keep on doing that, right? What I have heard over the years by interviewing these top agents across the country, they're saying, you know what? We're kind of getting away from buying internet leads. They're really expensive. They're getting called by dozens of the other same agents in my market. And instead, they're going back down to the basics, using a platform like ours to target their ideal prospects at the right time, right? By grabbing a neighborhood or a zip code, filtering the list, downloading it to Excel, and having conversations with people, okay? So keep in mind this case study first before we jump into the product. All right, so Greg Harrelson is a client of ours. He's one of the top agents in the country, the #1 realtor in South Carolina. Okay, so he's been a client of ours for about a decade, and I've interviewed him multiple times over the years, and he talks about the importance of using Cole to help him engage with his local communities. So when I interview him, I'm like, okay, well, what are you doing, Greg? What's working for you? And he talks about how he goes into specific neighborhoods. So think about a subdivision that he wants to work, a farm that he wants to own, right? He'll go into our system and map out the area, which I'll show you in a second to do. But then the first approach that he does with these people is he invites them to a community event, right? So think about collecting supplies for a food shelter, right? Organizing the blood mobile to come to the local park and then encouraging people to come donate blood. You know, teaming up with an animal shelter and asking people to donate supplies for animal shelter. And lots of ideas. So he'll call everybody, invite them to that event. It puts their guard down, and then he can have conversations with them, right? So on the phone, he tells folks, hey, I'm local. I'm down the street from you. I'm at 70th and Old Cheney. I'm not halfway across the country, right? I'm not an agent halfway across the world. I'm down the street from you. And yes, I would love to help with your real estate needs, but that's not why I'm calling. The reason I'm calling is that I wanted to let you know that we're doing an event at a park here and invite them. By the way, where are you from originally? Oh, do you have family back there? Have you ever thought about moving to be closer to family? What do you love about the neighborhood? Is there anything that you don't love? Right? And what you'll discover by having conversations with people is that people say things like, yeah, we love our neighborhood, but a lot of our friends have moved away. Our last daughter graduated 5 years ago. This house is too big for us. And guess what you did? You created your own lead that way, that you're not competing with all these other agents. They haven't gone onto a website, a lead form yet. And then you can follow up with them, right? And then what Greg says, then he overlays that, right? He contacts neighbors around a just listed, around a just sold. He creates a monthly e-newsletter specific for that neighborhood, right? And the subject line that he sends out, Edenton South Subdivision e-newsletter. So everything that we're going to talk about is this idea of a multi-channel approach, calling the people you can call, emailing the people you can email, door knocking, doing events, right? This multi-channel, being known as the industry expert. And yeah, is some of the data going to be wrong? It is here and there, right? And we know that. And with the right approach and the right conversations you're having, like Greg, that's the whole goal. Just have conversations with people. If somebody says, I haven't had that address for a few years. Oh, sorry about that. What neighborhood do you live in now? What do you love about that neighborhood? And start talking. Okay. So have this case study in mind as I log into the platform and show you guys how it works. So I'm flipping screens here. All right. And I'm going to log in on my own. Now, I don't have access to your portal, right? So I have to manually log in right now. But you guys will actually have nationwide access. All right. So nationwide access to go in 24/7 and do as many searches as you want to throughout the year. Okay. I have Nebraska loaded up just because that's where I'm familiar with, right? And I'm going to show you some zip codes. The first thing I want to point out, though, is really check out our message center. So when you log in, you'll see at the very top, we have lots of on-demand videos, on-demand content. Watch this, guys. Get to know, here's my full interview with Greg Harrelson. For a half hour, he lays out his entire plan on what works for him, right? If you go to our cool community, there's scripts in there. On the 18th here's another live webinar that you can sign up for to understand the system. We have live chat and live support, 8 to 5 Central Time as well. Okay. The first search I want to show you is the main search, okay? It's under our Prospect IQ tab. Guys, every time you do a search, just do it under the Prospect IQ tab. This is where you want to be. This is our main database. It has all of our data attributes tied to them. The other searches let you do basically the same thing that this one tab allows you to do. All those searches are in this one tab. Okay. The first search I want to show you would be to put in a zip code. So I'm going to go in there and just put in my zip code that I live in, 68516. Okay. And then we can narrow it down by demographics. So for this list, I'm going to say I want everybody who owns their home and has been there, let's say, for at least 8 years, right? Been there for 8 years. They're going to have some equity into the house. You could narrow it down by home values if you wanted to. Number of bedrooms, right? You can narrow it down by what vehicle they drive. If you want a high-end list, if you have a high-end listing coming up, find everybody who owns a Bentley or a Cadillac in your area. If you're a big golfer, grab a micro marketing list of all the golfers in your area or hunters in your area. Okay. So some of that stuff you might not ever use, but they're kind of nice to have here and there to get a micro marketing list. I'm going to leave them blank though, because if I said I wanted all the scuba divers in my area, it's not going to give me a very big list to show you. But at the bottom, I'm going to narrow it down and say, you know what? I want everybody who has at least one email address tied to the property. And what you'll see here is that it will bring up instantly 5,040 records that met our criteria. And all these folks have a name and address, a landline where available, a cell phone where available, and they all have an email, right? Because I put email as part of my requirement ahead of time. I'm going to show you how to download in a second, but I want everybody to really pay attention to this part. Okay, so before we download our list, we can add additional fields to our list, kind of build a profile about each prospect. So we're going to go here above the download button, and we're going to hit advanced options. Okay, it's kind of hidden there, but everybody remember this, advanced options. Okay, and then we're going to add some additional fields. I encourage you to always add age, right? Because you're going to treat somebody differently. Your message is going to be a little bit differently versus a 30-year-old versus an 80-year-old. I like to add length of residence each time. Again, somebody who has been there for 18 years versus 8 years, you're going to treat them a little bit differently. Maybe even add the lender name, right? Are they using a local lender versus a national lender? Just some demographics like that. So that same list is here now, right? And now we could sort here. So I'm going to sort by age. So think of different ways to do an outreach, everybody, right? If you want to sort by age, and then maybe your first outreach is inviting people above the age of 75 to a special event for seniors, right? Is there, a card club that you're starting up and inviting these people to that event? Is there an independent living center nearby that's having an open house? Interviewing a financial advisor on what to do when you retire, right? And inviting people to that event. Be the resource for folks to open up conversations with people, okay? And then to download your list, it's super easy. So if your list is smaller than 1,500, you can just go in here and pick all records and download. But we do have a little bit of a speed bump. And so you can download 1,500 records at a time, as many times as you want to. We can't let people download, 85,000 records at a time because it will kill our servers. So to download this list of 5,040 records, it's super easy. All we would do is say pages 1 through 15, because it displays 100 records per page, okay? And then we're gonna download Excel Common Fields Combined. I know there's different options there. Okay, just note this, everybody. This is what I encourage everybody to do. Pick Excel Common Fields Combined every time you download, right? And then you can save it as a CSV file if you want to. Make sure you name it accordingly of so you can remember it. And then from there, any other system you use, any CRM, any database provider, anything like that, they all have their own template for you to use to upload into their system as well. So you can just copy and paste the fields of data that you want from this Excel spreadsheet, paste it into one of those files that you're using, and then upload it into that CRM as well. Okay, so super easy to do. We grab our first 1,500, hit download, and then you just grab your next 1,500, download those. You can download this list of 5,040 records in about, a minute. All right, so super easy. All right, I'm gonna hit start over, and I'm gonna go show you the second main search. And honestly, the neighborhood search is probably the main search. I just like to start with the zip code to show you a lot of data up front that's at your fingertips by the zip code. So the second search is gonna be by neighborhood, and it's gonna ask you for a starting point address of a neighborhood that you wanna go into. All right, so I'm just gonna use the address that my wife and I live at, right? So less is always better. So for example, for our Whitefish Drive is our address, is our street. Just type in White. Type in the first few letters of the street name, because if you typed out Whitefish Drive, but you spelled out Drive, or you did it all in one word and it should be 2 words, you're gonna get zero results. Just type in the first few letters and call it good, because it goes by postal abbreviations. Same thing with city name. Never put in the city name, because I give the example, Millard, Nebraska was annexed by Omaha about 50 years ago. According to the post office, it's Omaha that gets mail. If you put in Millard, you're gonna get 0 results. So just put in the zip code. All right, step 2, I'm gonna narrow it down. I want homeowners within that neighborhood. But after that, I'm not gonna narrow it down by any other demographics, okay? The reason is that you can't predict a job transfer. You can't predict a divorce, right? People are moving all the time. We built about 5 years ago, and we have tons of friends that have already moved. We have friends that built a year ago that already moved. So if you're really going to farm a neighborhood and do a networking, you want to contact everybody, right? So I put in that starting point address. One thing to remember, guys, is that when you put in a starting point address, you can do some research in other addresses too, right? So think of expireds every morning that pop up in your system. On your MLS, log into your MLS. If you see some expireds, you want to contact them, you don't have their phone number or email, go into our system, type in that address, try to find a phone number and email to contact those expireds. Partial leads that you have, type in those addresses. But I want to show up the neighborhood here, so I'm going to map it out. All right, I'm going to hit freeform plotting. And I'm going to say, you know what? I want on this side of 66th Street over here, this side of Yankee Hill, and this side of 56th Street and Pine Lake, and map it out. Okay, so this is just like a subdivision search, but even better because it gives you the flexibility. You know, like our subdivision is in 2 areas, right? Kind of the older part and the newer part. You might want all of it. You might want to do it in halves. But now here's the 916 people that we have in this system, in that neighborhood, right? That I can start doing an outreach for. All right, and again, you can add the fields if you want to, things like that. And then the third search real quickly is going to be the apartment renter search or condo owner search. So I'm going to go back in again, just go do it under the Prospect IQ tab. I'm going to put in a zip code. So apartment renter data, condos, all of that is a tricky business. So I've been here for 17 years, guys. I don't know of other data sources that go into apartment buildings and provide you tenants because it's really hard to get that information and it's coded kind of goofy, right? So you think of apartments, sometimes they all get their own mail at their own address. Sometimes they all get it at one house number with a whole bunch of units. So I'm going to tell you now, guys, just do some research on your own. If you know, like there's an apartment complex on Surfside Drive that you want to go after, go type in Surfside Drive or go to the office building and try to ask, well, how are these people getting mail, right? Are they getting mail and find the street that they're on, they're getting mail. Just type in Surfside, hit search, find all possible records tied to that street. That's my number one advice there. Otherwise, you can go in here and say, under renters, under this, you can go here, find me apartment renters, hit all records and hit search. It's going to be we're not going to have it for everybody. That is for sure. Again, it's so hard to get this sort of data, but lots of information down to the tenant level. So if you have a new listing coming up and you want to market it to apartment renters, you want to go after first-time home buyers. For example, here's on 8750 South 30th Street. There's an apartment complex, and it goes down to the tenant level with their contact information as well. Phone numbers, emails, and cell phones were available. Okay, I know I've thrown a lot at you so far, so I'm going to do a quick pause. I do have a couple other searches I want to show, but before I do that, I know one of the main questions people get asked all of the time, well, how accurate is the data? Where is it coming from? I looked up this address and they've been there for a few years, or they haven't been there for a few years. What's going on? And I'm always upfront about this. And I think because I've had so many conversations with, literally hundreds of agents where I've interviewed them and they've had so much success with our system. I interviewed a call center called Call Tend a couple of weeks ago. And he's like, Tyler, we call millions of phone numbers every month. And I will go on record. So Mike Chang owns Call Tend, and he says, I'll go on record saying more people answer your phone numbers than any other data source that we call. And he goes, that's the whole goal, right, Tyler? Is just to have people answer the phone and have conversations with them. So we get our data from 60 different silos of data sources, and we're stitching them together all the time. Think about where you might get this information. So deed data is one of the sources, right? But you can't rely on deed data to get somebody's cell phone number, to get their email address, to get, what their hobby is. So think of if you would go get your oil changed, if you bought luxury hunting equipment, right? And you start filling out forms as you buy this stuff, data companies compile it, and then we put it together, we update it on a quarterly basis. Is it going to be 100% accurate? No, right? And so what we do is we score it behind the scenes. If you want the best data possible, we default providing average. If you want the best data possible, then go in here and pick confirm homeowner only and head of household. And this will tell you the primary address. So it's going to say this is the person who's most likely getting bills at the house. It's eliminating all the other household members above 18, giving you one person, most likely the most accurate information. It's still going to be 100% no, but it's going to be the best reliable information. But some people, a lot of people tell me, I'd say half the people I talk to will say, you know what, Tyler, I'm a salesperson. I need people to call. I need people to email. I want anybody. And so we do have information too tied as previous occupant, where we have records that are kind of in la la land. We don't know if they moved or not. We don't know where they moved to. Do you want them or not? And a lot of people is like, hey, if they have a phone number tied to them, I want them. And so I give this example. Good friends of ours were married for years, got divorced a few years ago. They had kids together. Both of their names were on the deed. The ex-husband moved out. The wife stayed, but she still lives there, has kids still there. He still gets mail at the house because his kids still live there. He lived there for 10 years. Now a new fiance moved in. He has a different last name. He's not on the deed. Data's tough, and that's just one example. Think of just all the examples you could have there. So don't focus on the records that might be inaccurate. You know, if somebody says, I'm in an address for a couple of years, oh, sorry about that. What neighborhood do you live in now? What do you love about that neighborhood? And have conversations with people, okay? So just have that in the back of your mind as you're doing this outreach. Again, it's a calling, emailing, door knocking, doing events, even uploading the same listing to Facebook for a custom audience, right? And having conversations with these folks. All right, so I know that's a lot of information there. Two more quick things, and we're going to open it up for Q&A. Does that sound okay, Carrie? Is there anything that maybe anything high level so far, other than I try not to talk too much, but I try to just get straight into the meat and potatoes for everybody.
Yeah, I think it's going great. We did have a question about DNC, and it does stand for Do Not Call List. So we answered that question. And then I think you just kind of covered the other question about how often the directory is updated.
Yep, absolutely. So two other searches I want to show you real quickly, and they're not used nearly as much. So everything I showed you, when we run reports of what people are searching for, 98% of the searches are done within this Prospect IQ tab that I showed you. But a couple of nice to haves is this retriever tab. So the retriever feature is the idea that you have your own list of addresses, but you don't have their phone number or email or name. You can upload this into our system and it will add the phone numbers and emails to your list. So think of if you live in a resort market, and most of the resort market is absentee owners, right? We're always going to have these getting mail at the address. We don't have their primary address tied to it. But you have access to that, whether you can download that from your assessor office, whether your title rep can give you that information. You can get that information of absentee owners of what their primary addresses are. So then here, you can then upload that list into our template that we have and get their phone numbers and emails to your Excel spreadsheet. There is a learning curve here, because when you talk about appending and matching data, it has to match exactly, right? The address has to be in the right format, the address. And so I always encourage you to only put in the house number, the zip code, and that's it. House number, street name, and zip code, and nothing else, and do the uploading. When you log in the message center up here, guys, there's like an 8-minute video that walks you through this step by step. Watch that video before you use this feature the first time, okay? Because it's a learning curve. Again, you're matching, appending, uploading data. But it's a great feature for people who are in those circumstances where you might have an old database that you want to try to update. All right. And then the last search I want to talk about is our commercial tab. First question up front. Tyler, do you have who owns the commercial properties? We do not. I don't know who could even get you that information. I get asked that about every day. So again, being here for 17 years, I get asked a lot of the same questions, and I don't know who owns the commercial property. This would though tell you if you want to find a genre of businesses, so a business type. So you can actually search by SIC code is where the government classifies a type of business. So for example, you might want to go after all the lawyers in your area to network with all the lawyers. You could do that and then type in and find all the lawyers in Lincoln, Nebraska and hit search. So think about, accountants you might want to network with. Lawyers are a good one, things like that. So now here's the 659 lawyers in our area in Lincoln that you can do an outreach for. Or, think about all those other case studies I talked about of doing events. Well, find all of the businesses in your zip code, all of them, and just do an outreach and say, hey, I'm doing this big fundraiser. Would you want to participate? Right? And then it gives you a chance to introduce yourself to all these businesses who are homeowners, who can give you referrals, right? So that's a way to, reach out to businesses as well. All right, so a recap, everybody. Unlimited, use it 24/7. If you do have specific questions, next week when you hop in, call our 800 number. It's here on the top of the screen, 800-800-3271. Talk to one of our sales reps. They'll be able to help you. Live chat as well from 8 to 5 Central Time. And then I encourage you, we have at least 2 live webinars a month. So every other week, essentially. I encourage you to sign up for one of those to get a live boot camp and then watch the on-demand training as well. And then Carrie, I know I've packaged up a lot of on-demand videos, short, long. I'm sure that you probably have a resource center for those folks as well to look at, to get a hold of those.
Yep, we'll be getting those up on Schmidt Resources. To answer Sharon's question, you guys can get to this 2 ways. You can go to your Moxie Hub, and there is a link for Cole Realty Resource, or you can go to CB Desk and also get to Cole. So either way, it'll launch you into the portal, and then we will be building out the square on Schmidt Resources with all those great videos because there's some really great content there.
Cool. So open it up for questions, guys. Quiz me or again, take it all in and then call our support team later on. But I'm happy to jump on and answer any questions. So while we're waiting for a few questions to load up, I want to go over just one more case study, Carrie, if you don't mind. And I want to talk about is inventory is tight everywhere. Correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie. I'm guessing it's as tight there as it is any other market I talk to, right?
Michigan, Ohio, Florida, all the same problem.
Right. And so I just interviewed John Mostello, a client of ours, and he talked about how he had buyers that wanted to live in a specific area, right? So I'm guessing a lot of people on this Zoom are working with some buyers right now who've been outbid on properties and have gone through all that craziness. So think of this example. So John had a client, a younger family. They actually owned their house and they lived on a really busy street. And they said, John, you can sell our house, but we are not going to list it until you can find us a house in a neighborhood that we want to live in, right? We're going to be picky this time around. So John went into our product. He grabbed a specific neighborhood, the Edenton South subdivision, got about 1,800 records. He downloaded that list, and then he called the people, left voicemails, etc., and he sent an email to these people. And essentially what he said to these folks were, hey there, my name is John Mostello. I'm a local real estate agent over at XYZ Realty located at 70th and Old Cheney. I want to give you a quick call to see if you perhaps know of anyone in the Pine Oak subdivision who might be looking to list their house soon. I have a great family, John and Linda Smith, who currently live on Patterson Street, and they've been looking for a house in your area for quite some time. They really like your subdivision because of the big trees and how close it is to Maxey Elementary. And they live on a really, really busy street. And they want to live in a neighborhood like yours where maybe their kids can, play in their front yard without being scared, right? And so he did that, that sort of approach. So he called the people, emailed the people, the subject line, buyers looking in Edenton South subdivision. And fast forward, he had a retired couple where the husband replied to his voicemail. Ironically, the wife replied to his email. They were getting ready to look into retirement homes, but hadn't listed their house yet. And so John brought his buyers to the property. They loved it, and he got a pocket listing out of the deal. So it took him about 15 minutes to do this approach, right? By calling, emailing, that sort of thing. And then he got additional leads from people, right, as well, who had said, yeah, we're maybe looking to list here soon, but not now. And so what he talked about is a very non-intrusive way to do an outreach and be as descriptive as possible. So if you guys have buyers that are looking, maybe it's a retired couple that want to live next to a golf course, or, somebody wants to live in a certain school district. That's a way to leverage those buyers to have conversations with people. All right. Any other questions, guys?
Under the directory tab, what are the fields census tract and area code looking for?
Guys, I bet this gets used barely ever. It would more or less just be if you wanted to try to find somebody by a name, try to find somebody that's the biggest thing, by name. Census tract is if you have the census tract, it's kind of like a zip code, right, to narrow it down. So do a Google on what census tract is. It's a smaller subset group of a zip code per se. No one really uses this tab. So if in my humble opinion, pretend it's not here and focus on everything here in the Prospect IQ.
Great. And then Michelle asked to get tax mailing addresses. You go through the Retriever tab and upload a list of property site addresses. So, Michelle, we don't actually have the tax mailing address, if I'm correct, Tyler.
Correct. So think of, if you're in an absentee owner market, right? Those people generally, a lot of the absentee owners have a primary record elsewhere. So we don't have access to that. We have access to the local address, where they're getting mailed to at that property, right? But most agents I talk to have access to a way to get their primary addresses, whether it's through their title company, whether it's through their assessor office, things like that, where they can go get a list of absentee owners and then upload that into our system of those primary addresses across the country. And then you can try to get phone numbers and emails for those people.
Great. And then can you just real quick recap a high level what each tab is?
Yep. So 9, I don't really want to talk about the other ones. So Prospect IQ is where you want to be. All of the other tabs basically live within the Prospect IQ. So the Prospect IQ has the neighbor search, because the Prospect IQ is where we have our property data, like the age of the person, income levels, all of that lives within this Prospect IQ. So we built it around. So this neighbor search lets you do a neighbor search, but it's not going to give you those additional data attributes. They're all under this by neighborhood here instead. The same thing by renter. It's all under that. All under the renter is all found underneath these other tabs as well, under the renter here. So those are all, you could use maybe the aerial view, and it would allow you to put in an address, and it gives you a bird's eye view of the neighborhood. And then if you click on every house, it gives you their phone number and email. So if you want to call off the screen and kind of look at the houses, I don't encourage you to do that. Instead, I'd say go into the Prospect IQ and map out a neighborhood. And then when you call into that neighborhood, know the landmarks. Do some research. Is it the Edenton South neighborhood? Okay. Is there a Scooter's Coffee House nearby? And do your prospecting that way.
Great. And then the question was, can you search by a cell phone number? If you don't have the address, but you have the cell phone number, can you search by that?
Unfortunately, it's in the directory tab that you could search by phone number. It's harder. It's an option in there. It's not the most reliable. So we're more address centric. Put in an address, pull addresses, that sort of thing.
Great. And then to reiterate for Janice, you can get to Cole Realty Resource either through the Moxie Hub or going to mycbdesk.com. Both have links to auto log you in. You don't have to have a username or password, which is amazing. So you can go through Moxie Hub or CB Desk. Can you show the map search again? Or can you show an actual map search real quick, please?
Yep. So we're going to go under the Prospect IQ tab, under Neighborhood, put in a starting point address or at least a street name. Less is always better, right? So we're just going to type in the first few letters of a street name. Never put in the city, only put in the zip code. Then you can narrow it down by your demographics if you want to. So I'm going to put in confirm homeowner. I'm going to go to the very bottom, hit search. It brings us up a starting point address. From there, I can pick radius or map around it. I'm going to hit freeform plotting. If I mess up, I can hit freeform plotting again. And then we can just start mapping around, have the flexibility to do whatever you want to here. And then view available prospects.
Great. And then Sean looks like she had an issue. When I search my street, everyone on the street is shown. When radius search button at the bottom and then add a larger area, 3/4 of the addresses on the street were gone. So that very well may be a help desk scenario. So if you want to send me that address, Carrie@schmidthq.com, we can do some troubleshooting with them and then we'll get you an answer back.
Yep. And then even call our support team. We have dedicated people that see those scenarios all the time. Sometimes too, it's, depending on the neighborhood, the longitude and latitude that we're getting from mapping could be off a little bit. And, so in scenarios, you're right. It's kind of an offline one, Carrie.
Good. And then Pete said that it looked as though all or most of the cell phone numbers were on the do not call list. Is that correct? And that's probably going to just, I guess, be random. Do you have a percentage that you've found?
I mean, there's a lot on there. So it definitely is hit or miss as OK or DNC on there. So I don't have a percentage offhand, though, but it's going to depend on the age, the neighborhood, location, definitely.
Okay. And then the question is, any distressed property searches?
No. So we're just going to be a database of everybody. We're not triggers. We're not expireds. We're everyone. So if you have a source to get distressed properties or things like that, a lot of those sources don't have phone numbers or emails. So you could look those addresses up one by one in our system to get them. Or, do a little research on your own. It tends to be a lot of times distressed properties. If you know where one's at, there might be a few around it, and really work that neighborhood, that zip code, etc.
Great. Well, Tyler, we want to thank you so much for everybody on the call. The recording will go out after the fact. We're going to build out our resource square on Schmidt Resources. You're seeing the 800 number right there, so feel free to reach out to the support team. If you have access issues, just let me know. We'll work through some of those. And if you think of any questions after the fact, send them on over and we'll coordinate with Tyler and get you some answers. So thank you guys so much for joining. We really appreciate it. Tyler, thank you so much. And look for this recording shortly.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye now.
All right. Bye.